Okay, everyone, welcome back. And today we will be treating a very sensitive topic. That's the Islamic movement of Nigeria versus the federal government. Now, for those people who don't know too much about this movement, have conflicting views about them, now I'll be laying out some facts about them so that we can all understand better what's going on in this crisis between the IMN and the government, which some people just call them the Shia and the government. Now, at the center of the whole confrontation is the Iran-backed leader of the Shia movement known as the IMN. That's Ibrahim el-Zakzaki. Like he's the almost like the be it and end all of the whole issue, of the whole controversy, of the whole problem we are talking about. Is at the center of the whole thing. I'm not saying is the cause of the whole problem, but what I'm saying is that he's at the center of the whole issue. And everyone knows that. Now, again, I said Iran backs the guy, so he's backed by Iran. Now, before we go into all the nitty-gritty of everything now, who are Shia? Like, what does even the word Shia really mean? Now, there are many things that distinguish Shia from the other sect within Islam. Now, Shia is a particular sect in Islam. Now, some people don't really know this. In Islam, there are two main sects. Now, there are other sects, there are other smaller sects and things like that, or at least school of thoughts. But the main sects, the first one is the Sunni. That is the people of the tradition. I guess they call themselves the people of the tradition. Then the Shia. Now, the Shia, those are those ones. Now, actually, the controversy comes from between Shia and Sunni, or the split comes from disagreements over who was going to take over from Muhammad after the Prophet Muhammad died. Now, who was going to take over from him? Now, the Shia believe that the adopted son, I guess, no, the son-in-law, not the adopted son, the son-in-law of Muhammad should be the caliph. That is, the person taking over from Muhammad. While the Sunni believed that it was supposed to be the father-in-law of Muhammad, that's Abu Bakr, that was supposed to be the one. Now, I guess Abu Bakr was made the caliph actually, which sort of made the Shia people disgruntled. They were kind of angry about that, so they believed that the Sunni sort of betrayed what was supposed to be the natural order of things. That's what they believed. So there are many other differences between Shia and the Sunni, and because they have been that way for so many generations, that means that there's going to be cultural differences and some other things like that. And of course, there are nations that are mainly Shia and there are nations that are mainly Sunni. That doesn't mean that the other sects don't live within that nation or not. For example, Syria, we all know about the Syrian civil war that brought about ISIS and some other things like that. Now, in Syria, the ruling class is Shia. Now, I'm not particularly sure if Shia are the majority, but the ruling class is Shia. Now, the Sunni believe that they are being oppressed by the Shia-led government of Syria. That's one of the reasons why they had all that Syrian civil war, which later gave birth to the Al-Nusra and the ISIS movement. Now, in other countries like Iran, the majority are Shia. So, of course, the Sunni people there are going to feel a little bit marginalized, feel like, okay, maybe we are being trampled upon and things like that. It's just normal stuff. It's ethnic, I won't call it ethnic, cultural struggle in the Islamic countries for ages. It has always been that way. So, but in Nigeria, we haven't really had that much of Shia population in Nigeria for a very long time. Basically, you meet a Muslim right now, chances are that the Muslim is going to be a Sunni. Like a very high chance, because virtually every single Muslim in Nigeria are Sunni. They are Sunni. And very few people are Shia. before El-Zakzaky started growing the movement, there had been Shia people in Nigeria before then, but he was actually the one that brought the movement into limelight, that really, really spurred the movement on and made sure that the Shia people, the Shia population in Nigeria grew. And some people actually have the population to estimate to be around 4 million Shia in Nigeria, although it is said that most of them live in Sokoto area. But very good population of Shia in Nigeria, from almost non-existent before Al-Zakzaky started. Now, there are reports that Al-Zakzaky was formerly a Sunni, but later converted to Shia. Some believe that it was after he went to Iran in the 80s that he became became Shia, and some believe that it was while he was in prison in Nigeria here for some of his, in quotes, radical actions and behavior that he converted into Shia. Now, in the early activist years of El-Zakzaky, he wasn't very, very open with his Shiism. That is, he was not very open with it. It was later on in the 1990s that he became outspoken about his beliefs in Shiism. That is, he openly and officially became a Shia leader. Now, when he formed the IMN, of course, he furthered the Shia movements and things like that, using philanthropy and things like that to get to people, to convert local people into Shiism. I used very clever means to get that done. And then he has been doing that for a lot of years. And he actually got arrested a lot. He got arrested a lot. He got arrested in the 80s, got arrested a couple of times in the 90s, got arrested in the 2000s. Now he's arrested again. So he's not a new person. It's not new to being arrested. Getting cracked down upon. So he's used to that. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's a bad thing, but he's used to that. I don't believe it's going to faze him in any way. He's someone that's already used. I don't think it will really mean too much to him, because he has faced such what many people call persecution so much. So I guess that's just it. Now, the issue of Shiism and then Sunni Muslims and the fighting is something that actually transcends just issues between people within a country. In the case of Saudi Arabia, which is predominantly Sunni, and Iran, which is predominantly Shia, they keep pushing the ideology in different countries, the ideologies in different countries. Like in Yemen, it's one of the problems in the Yemen war. The Yemen civil war is actually from the hands of Saudi Arabia and Iran. So it's almost like a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But the fight is in another person's land, in Yemen. So the Yemenis are suffering, the Yemenis are dying, the Yemenis are the ones doing the dying, the Yemenis are the ones doing facing the famine, a couple of years ago, severe cholera outbreak and things like that. They're the ones facing it. But these two countries are not the ones facing it. Now, the Iran support the Hezbollah in Yemen, and the Saudi Arabians believe that the Hezbollah are terrorist groups, so they believe they have to wipe them out. So in attacking Hezbollah, they end up attacking regular citizens, killing so many people in Yemen. And some people have been complaining about the role of the United States in that conflict. Anyway, it's not about that. Now, Zakzaky has also advocated for the complete Sharia law. Complete Sharia law. He's not a believer in partial Sharia law or things like, okay, let's reform the Sharia law, or let's reform Islamic rule, or things of that nature. He's an advocate for total Sharia system. Now, he believes that violence is justified against the Americans in the name of Islam. he also has he also does not believe in the authority of the country, of the Nigerian government. Now, the way the Nigerian government has always seen it is that, okay, he does not believe in the Nigerian government and the authority of the Nigerian government or the courts or things like that. So that means that he is looking for the downfall of the nation. He does not believe in the sovereignty of the nation, does not believe in the authority of the nation. That automatically it means that he wants the downfall of the nation. Well, I don't think much evidence supports that anyways. I don't think much evidence supports that. Obviously, that's what the government says, but I don't think much evidence supports that. Now, he doesn't support, it's not in support of the government. And why is he not in support of the government? Because he believes that the government is corrupt and that the government is ungodly. That's what he believes. And of course, that's what the movement believes, largely speaking. Now, the government has been cracking down on the movement for a while now. The government has been cracking down on them. Serious attacks on the gatherings of the Shia, that is the IMN. And of course, not all Shia people in the nation belong to the IMN. Even though their sympathies may lie with the IMN, but not all officially belong with the IMN. So we often use the words Shia and IMN interchangeably, but not exactly the same. There are some Shia that are not part of the IMN. Also, there is one thing that some people have been having a lot of issues about. Now, besides the fact that the government has cracked down on the IMN, the Boko Haram has also cracked down on the IMN. In 2014, November 3, 2014, a Boko Haram suicide bomber attacked an IMN procession. I think it was the Ashura procession that they were having in Yobe State, killing 20 members of the IMN. Now, some people see it as a sort of sectarian violence in that case, because the Boko Haram is a sort of Sunni branch of Islam. It's a sort of Sunni jihadist group. That's the Boko Haram. While Hezbollah in Yemen is a sort of jihadist group on behalf of the Shia sect. Now, so it would seem like a form of sectarian violence when the Boko Haram attacks the IMN. And that's obviously one of the things that some of the IMN leaders see. They believe that the government is cracking down on them because the Shia are a minority, and many of the Sunnis are scared of an uprising by the Shia. So that's what some of them believe, that some of the Sunni are trying to crack down on them because they are the minority. So they don't want the Shia to come up and become a sort of rival to the Sunni in the nation, which of course, like I said before, are the majority in Nigeria. So, well, again, the IMN members pledged their allegiance to the late Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, who is Ayatollah Khomeini? Ayatollah Khomeini was the supreme leader, or the supreme religious leader of Iran after the Iranian Revolution. The Iranian Revolution happened in 1979, where Shah, that is the Shah government, was overthrown, and Ayatollah Khomeini became the de facto leader of the nation. Now, Ayatollah Khomeini is a religious leader, which means Iran essentially became a theocracy. Now, El-Zakzaky actually is a big fan of Ayatollah Khomeini. And of course, many of the processions of the IMN, they go around with the pictures of Ayatollah Khomeini, or at least they revere Ayatollah Khomeini as a very powerful and as a very inspirational revolutionary. Now, when you start hearing words like revolutionary or associations with revolutionaries, any government starts feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Now, I'm not trying to excuse the government of Nigeria for cracking down on the IMN, but any government will be very, very careful when there is a particular movement talking about revolution or being affiliated with any form of revolution. Because what happened in the Iranian regime, in the Iranian revolution, was that a sitting government was deposed. Now, a sitting government was deposed by an Islamic system, an Islamic leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, became the leader after the whole thing. Now, of course, back then, one of the things they were complaining about was injustice in the nation, all forms of corruption and things like that, which are legitimate causes. But what I'm just saying is that no government is going to sit around and allow any possibility of a revolution to keep brimming around and to come up under his watch. So that's just it. So that's obviously one of the reasons why the government is cracking down on them. Whether or not the religious sectarianism is part of it, this one is a very clear reason. If a group is being a little bit revolutionary, the government is going to crack down on them. That doesn't make it right, but that's what most governments do. It can be a form of human rights abuse, but that's what most governments do. So now, there's also another thing about the IMN, and of course, they also pledged their allegiance to their leader, El Zakzaki, and not to the Nigerian government, just like their leader. And of course, they despise the Nigerian government for being ungodly and corrupt. Now, IMN is also anti-Zionist, just like many Islamic groups. Now, this one is not just about the sect of the Shia or whatever. Basically, all Islamic groups hate Israel. They hate that Israel exists. They believe that Israel should not exist as it is right now, or Israel does not have the right to exist. They believe that Israel's existence is bringing misery to the Palestinians. That's what they believe. That is the Arabs in Israel area, or that is the Arabs in Palestinian region. That's what they believe. Now, whether or not that is true, I leave that to anyone's guess or anyone's research. So now, they are completely anti-Zionist. They hate the United States and they hate Israel. They believe because the United States is helping Israel, the United States has warm ties with Israel, that it means the United States is supporting every single policies of Israel. And that means that the United States is the big Satan to them. They believe that Israel is satanic, so obviously the United States is the big Satan. The big Satan supporting Israel. So that's what they believe. So that's why you see in many of the protests burning the Israeli flag, burning the American flag, protesting against Israel and protesting against the United States. So it's a general stuff. It's a general stuff. So next, in 2015, there was a clash that led to the arrest of Zakzaki and his wife, Zinat. Now, December 12, 2015, soldiers opened fire on IMN members, killing, according to reports, about 300 members. Some reports say higher than that, of the Shia group attending a ceremony at a religious center in Zaria, that's in Kaduna State. Allegedly, the IMN members had stopped the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Yusuf Buratai, while al-Zakzaki was about delivering a speech in the religious center. That's at the capital of the IMN movement. That's the capital. Now, the convoy came under attack by the IMN members, and the soldiers, in their defense, had to protect their boss. At least that's what the soldiers said. No one can be very sure if they are lying or not, because the IMN members say otherwise. So it's almost like he said kind of situation. Even though it seems like the evidence seems to be swaying towards the side of the IMN. So it looks like the IMN are the people writing the description of the event. But one can never know, at least not right now. Then, because they felt that they had to protect the chief of army staff, they opened fire. They killed a lot of IMN members, which I think is completely unnecessary. Now, I don't think those IMN members had guns on them. They had weapons, according to them, like sticks, stones, like weapons of that nature. Not really serious machine guns and things like that the army had. So the army mowed them down, killed them in scores, and then captured Zakzaki and his wife. And then he's been under arrest since then. He has always been under the detention of the government since that time. Now, I'm going to digress a little bit. In this nation, we know that the government forces, the security forces, can be very, very brutal in addressing riots. They use excessive force in addressing riots. That is not to everyone. I mean, in this country, the so-called respect for the soldiers, the so-called respect for the military is simply because you fear them. By fearing them, I mean simply because you are terrified by what they can do. They are almost like, it's not like they're exactly above the law, but almost like they are above the law. They do anything they like. They terrify people, almost like terrorize people. A soldier can come up to you and beat you up simply because you are sagging. I mean, simply because because of your dressing code. You can become a victim of a soldier because of that. You can become a victim of a soldier simply because somebody decided to call them to beat you up. Maybe because of some payment dispute and some things like that. You can get beat up because of that. So many things in that nature. Even the police officers. Excessive force is the norm in Nigeria. Many people fear them, not because, they have done something bad or anything like that, but simply because these people cannot be trusted. They overuse force, and of course, seeing them going around in with AK-47, I don't even know the reason why police officers go around with AK-47. AK-47 is supposed to be a combat rifle. It's an assault rifle for combat, serious combat. But almost every single officer in Nigeria goes around with the AK style. That's the Kalashnikov style rifle. I don't know the reason. It's awkward, but that's what they do. And it's just horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible. Excessive use of force in Nigeria by the security forces is horrible. So that's one of the reasons why most people are going to be disposed to believe that the security forces for the chief of army staff, that's the soldiers protecting him, actually used excessive force while they were trying to arrest Al-Zakzaki. And of course, he got shot. Al-Zakzaki got shot before he got arrested. They shot at him and arrested him. And he's still under detention till now. So that was what happened then. And since then, the movement has always been protesting for the release, the unconditional release of their leader. Even a court ordered that Zakzaki's detention was unlawful, yet the government did not release him. This year, the government decided that, they were going to put a lead on the activities of the IMN. So, they decided that the IMN should be proscribed. Now, I'm going to say something very briefly. I'm not saying that the IMN have not been violent in some ways. Obviously, the IMN have been very, very violent in some ways. They have done some serious damages to properties in some ways during some of their protests. Now, whether or not that is provoked by the government or the government security forces, the police officers and the soldiers trying to quell the protest, that's for a different discussion. But the fact is that the IMN themselves have been a little bit violent in some of their protests. They've damaged cars, they've burned down cars and things like that. They've ruined premises during their protest. So I'm not going to absolve them of any guilt in violence. They have done some violence. Now, the only question is whether or not the violence that they committed is justified. That's the only question. The IMN has indulged in some violence. Whether or not it's justified is the question. And many people are going to believe that it's justified in some ways. Now, that's for that. Then, and the latest one that people got seriously killed was in the July 22nd bloody protest, in which the deputy commissioner of police at FCT got killed in the protest. Because I don't understand. Was he killed by his own men? I don't know. It has to have been from the IMN. Now, I'm not painting the whole of the IMN as being violent. There, in any movement, there are always going to be some people who will get violent in any form of protest. So that does not smear the whole protest or smear the whole movement. Now, for the, yes, after the commissioner of police, the deputy commissioner of police was killed, another person was killed, and that was a corps member. A corps member working for Channels TV was killed also in that protest. So I guess that was one of the things that really, really spurred the government to declare this group as being a terrorist group. Now, declaring them terrorist group, I think, is an overreach. Absolutely an overreach. Because what you are doing is that you are trying to silence them, you're trying to sort of repress or suppress them. And what you get out of that, if you're not very careful, is the same situation you might get from the Boko Haram. Now, I'm not saying that the IMN is going to become the next Boko Haram or whatever like that, but if you push a set of people too far, they tend to retaliate. Now, going back to the same issue of the Iranian revolution, the government cracked down on the protesters and the protests grew larger. The government was confused. They cracked down a lot more. The protests grew larger until the protest was so much that they had to abdicate the authority. The throne. The Shah had to abdicate and relinquish his hold on the authority in the nation. And the authority fell into the hands of Khomeini. Now, I'm not saying the same thing is going to happen in Nigeria, but what I'm saying is that cracking down is not usually the best way to deal with a group. It's not necessarily the best way. Cracking down on them is only going to get them more and more radicalized. That's what you get. They get more and more radicalized. Of course, there are always areas where you need to use violence, like in the case of ISIS or Boko Haram. They really are causing a lot of trouble, killing a lot of people. You can crack down. These guys are not killing people all around. They demand for the leader to be released. That's all they demand. Now, they have committed some crimes, some crimes and violence during some of the encounters with the police force. That's true. That's true. But it was not unprovoked. It was absolutely not unprovoked. The government has done so much in cracking down on this group. So many IMN members have been killed. So many. 2018, many were massacred during one of their processions. I think that was Albin or something like that. Many people were massacred by the security forces. Now, it's a very serious thing. It's a very, very serious thing. People are being killed by the government within this group. And at the end of the day, what do? They ban them. They ban them. Honestly, the way the whole thing is going, it's very, very difficult for one to not think that it has some undertones of sectarianism in it. Honestly, I'm not going to blame anyone in the IMN movement that believes that they are being prosecuted simply because they are Shia and they are in the minority. I'm not going to blame any one of them, because it does seem like that. Now, there isn't enough evidence to claim that is the truth, but it seems to be that way in some ways. There are ways that you could look at it that it really, really looks like that. I mean, all these crackdowns, it really, really looks like that. It's really, really bad. So that's what I can say about that. Now, in the IMN's perspective on this crisis, they believe, like I said before, it has some undertones of sectarianism, that the majority, Sunni, and especially Buhari, the president, which is a Sunni Muslim, is cracking down on them. They believe that. Then they believe it's human rights violation and a constitutional violation. That is the aspect of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And that it's a violation of court order. That order that Zakzaki should be released. Now, that's their own case. That's the IMN's case. It boils down to government cracking down on them and persecution, unwarranted persecution. That's the case that they have against the government, that they are just being prosecuted. And that's why you see in some of their professions, crying women and all of that. It's sad, actually. It's sad. Very sad. Now let's go over to the government case, or government's perspective on this. The government, on the other hand, actually have some reasons to complain also. Not a very strong case, but it's relatively strong also. Even though you might think that they're actually using this as a pretext for sectarianism and some other things, which, like I said, there is not enough evidence for that. So I guess the case is not as clear as some people think it is. Bad and good and all of that. The aspect that I think is very, very bad is in the killings of so many IMN members. That's the aspect I believe is very, very bad. Very, very awful. It should be condemned. It's very reprehensible, very evil. These people aren't really hurting people around. They aren't carrying out serious attacks. They're not carrying out things that attacks on people, on churches, or on mosques, or things like that, like the Boko Haram does. So naming them a terrorist organization is like watering down the meaning of terrorist organization. Yeah, it's a misuse of the term. It's a misuse of the term. Now, let's look at the case for the government. Now, according to the IGP Muhammad Adamu, pledging allegiance to a foreign country or to foreign countries for political, financial, and training support. That's what they have. That's one of the reasons that they pledge allegiance to Iran. Because, yeah, they get inspired by Ayatollah Khomeini. That was like the Islamic hero of the Islamic revolution in Iran. And that they actually want that sort of revolution in Nigeria. So to them, it's like, oh, these people are supporting or pledge allegiance to a foreign nation, so they are not legitimate Nigerians or not patriotic Nigerians. That's the case for the government, or the case of the government against them. Number two is that unauthorized blocking of public highways, illegal curfews and checkpoints, raids on security assets and agents, as well as invasion of court premises to abort legal proceedings involving their members. So that's another complaint of the IGP, for which they decided to name them a terrorist organization. These two reasons that I've mentioned don't rise to the level of terrorist organization yet. So let's continue. Setting up a paramilitary guard known as Horas, through which IMN has been terrorizing local residents. So, the paramilitary guard, or the guard corps of the IMN, which does look a little bit similar to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which boils down again to the revolution part of it. Like I said, when you start mentioning revolution, it becomes very unsettling for the government. No government is going to sit around and hear you talking about revolution and not act. Do I think the actions are way over the top? Absolutely. Way over the top. But no government is going to sit around and hear about revolution or see parallels with revolution happening in their country and will not do anything. So now, the IMN extended, that's another point. The IMN extended its violent protest on July 9, 2019 to the National Assembly. The protesters overwhelmed the first gate of the complex, inflicting damage on the security post, and marched on to the second one just before the main complex while the lawmakers were in session. The protesters also damaged the police vehicle and several other vehicles belonging to the visitors. Now, this particular aspect, I do not support the IMN in this, the violent aspect. Like I said, the IMN has involved itself in some violence. I don't believe every single member of the IMN has involved in violence. Obviously, I don't think the children and I don't think the women weeping in the streets actually contributed to this violence. So I don't think that's it. In fact, I don't even believe that the old men moving around with pictures of al-Zakzaki are the one committing the violence. Now, the younger ones that are very, very passionate seem to be the one committing the violence. That doesn't make it right, and it needs to be condemned. Attacking the National Assembly of the country, it's very, very bad. Very, 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 very awful. Now, so many people got arrested, that's true, but I mean, it's very, very bad. So, it's very, very bad, but the government should not crack down the way they are cracking down. The way the government has been going about it is only going to push the movement to become more radical. They need to release the man. Simply release the man, give him asylum in Iran or give him asylum somewhere, or just release the man. Release him one way or the other. That's what you can do. So that's about that. Then another attack around Federal Secretariat. That's the last reason why they decided to label them a terrorist organization. Another attack around Federal Secretariat in Abuja on July 22nd, 2019, setting a substation of the NEMA, that's NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency, containing a truck and an ambulance on fire, and death of the Deputy Commissioner of Police and a Channels TV reporter who was an NYSC corps member. I already mentioned that. So these are the complaints that the IGP came up with. Now, are these complaints enough to label them a terrorist organization? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't really think so. I don't think so. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But the cracking down is the problem. And one of the problems that the proscription is going to cause is that now every single protest of the IMN is going to be almost necessarily going to be violent, because the police officers are going to have to go after them now because they have been described as being illegal. So the police officers are going to go after them, which is almost necessarily going to lead to violence. And a couple of people will get killed again. Maybe another police officer gets killed. Maybe a couple of the IMN members get killed again. This is madness. It's absolute madness. It's absolute madness. It's unwarranted. It's unwarranted. It's complete madness. The situation has to be handled in an adult way. The group should be invited by the federal government for dialogue. And in fact, before dialogue, they should release the man. They need to release al-Zakzaki. I'm not a very big fan of al-Zakzaki, but they need to release it. They can always dialogue over the issue later on. I mean, a court order asked them to release al-Zakzaki. So I really don't understand why the government is doing this. And that's why I'm saying I'm not completely ruling out the aspect of, oh yeah, sectarianism an issue. I don't believe that's the reason. At least I don't believe there's enough evidence to say that's the reason. But some people say it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. You know, it might be a duck. So that's where I'm going to end it today. So thank you very much, and see you next time.